Hey, everybody, welcome back to the podcast. You're listening to the longest running superhero role playing game on Earth. I'm your host, the Game Master, and today we're talking about Japan, anime, and specifically an anime that's near and dear to my heart, which is New Cutey Honey, which was released in 1994. I had just turned 18 at the time, and in my humble opinion, anime was really taking root in America for the first time ever. There was obviously anime before that. As a kid, I'd watched Voltron, for instance, and Robotech had been around in the 80s too. But in the 90s, the early 90s, if I walked into my local comic book store, I never saw anime. But around the time I turned 18, all of that changed. Anime seemed to be taking off in a way it just had not done prior to that. That's just my opinion, of course, and as is with most things, your mileage may vary. But I suppose that the point is that in our role playing game, this was about the time that we started to be more into anime characters than we had previously. And Cutie Honey was a prominent character in particular. But before we get into all that, smash like, make sure you're subscribed, and leave us a comment. We've got an awesome community here, and it's all thanks to you guys. So thank you so much for being here. With all that said, let's dive in. The prologue to this one takes place in Japan on July 16th of 1988 when a Dr. Manhattan-like character known as Akira unleashes a massive wave of destruction, changing the landscape in Japan, both literal and figuratively, forever. In the years that follow, as Japan rebuilds, that area becomes known as Neo Tokyo. Which brings us to the main plot, which takes place in 1994 in Neo Tokyo. Mayor Light gives a speech about crime in the city as his secretary, Honey Kisaragi, looks on. She has short dark hair and blue eyes. She's wearing a pink blouse with a purple dress jacket. As Mayor Light calls on the citizens to oppose the criminals of the city, suddenly there's a large explosion. A group of bikers on high tech motorcycles drive up. The front of each bike is outfitted with the kind of guns you'd expect to find on a jet fighter. They open fire on the police here, who return fire using only handguns. So it's a slaughter. In the crowd is a boy named Cho K, who sees one of the bikers get ready to use a battle axe on Mayor Light. So Choke sucker punches the thug, knocking him down. This freelance gang of armored, axe wielding mutant motorcyclists stop momentarily, and their leader laughs that this kid just jumped him. As the bikers laugh, Choke says he can't just sit by and do nothing. From a nearby rooftop, his grandfather loudly laughs and says, "That's the spirit. The blood of the Hayame family bleeds true." This is Hayame Danbei, someone Honey knew in the 1970s. Her memories of that era begin to be unlocked as Danbei leaps off the rooftop using his powers as a cyborg to start defeating bikers left and right. Watching this fight is Peeping Spider, who wears robotic spider legs and an electronic trinocular scope. He has clinging, invisibility, X ray vision. He can detect space time disturbances and trap people in webs like Spider Man does. Grandpa Donbay tells Peeping Spider to come out and fight, and Peeping Spider gives out a Joker like laugh and says Donbay should be more aware of his surroundings before running his mouth. So Donbei looks around and sees the current number one supervillain in Neo Tokyo arrive on the scene. His name is Dolmec. He's about the size of M. Bison, and he wears a suit of power armor that is reminiscent of the armor worn by a medieval knight. He has a cape and is feared even by the other criminals here. Just then, a second supervillain arrives on the scene. She does one of those famous superhero landings. She wears power armor that has angel wings, somewhat similar to what Archangel has in Marvel Comics, the version that was given to him by Apocalypse, that is. When she lands, the wings surround her and hide her. When she parts them, we see that her power armor has a glass portion on top, shaped kind of like the glass helmet worn by Mr. Freeze on Batman the Animated Series. This glass portion of her suit also has features of the sorts of glass vessels we see so often in fiction, where they're used to grow a clone. Where her wings part, we see her face, and she's a very young girl with a bored expression. Dolmec says it would seem that Mayor Light can't even handle petty outlaws. The heroes ask who Dolmec is, and making it clear that he is the opposite of Mayor Light, he refers to himself as a Lord of Darkness. Dolmec then invites the mayor to rule the city under him as his minion, and of course, Mayor Light declines the invitation. Dolmec laughs and departs. Grandpa Donbay unleashes a volley of missiles, but when the literal smoke clears, there are no signs of Dolmec. No body, nothing. That night, at Dolmec's expansive headquarters, a female minion named Death Star asks Dolmec why he didn't just kill everyone while he had the chance. Dolmec doesn't seem worried about it and instead takes her to bed as the female villain known as Black Maiden looks on from the shadows. After that, Death Star goes to a city council meeting where she kills everyone there before Mayor Light arrives. When he and his people walk in and ask where everyone is, Death Star attacks them with a machine gun. She's a beautiful woman with light-colored hair and a large star on the right side of her face. Grandpa Donbay responds to the noise of machine gun fire and takes cover behind some overturned benches. He tells Honey who she is and that she doesn't know he tells her who she is and she doesn't know what he's talking about. So Donbay opens fire on Death Star while the others run away. As they're going down the stairs, those bikers from earlier are actually riding these high-tech bikes up the stairs. So the heroes go up the stairs to get away from them, and they all wind up on the roof. Death Star has them cornered, and the bikers back her up. The leader of the bikers says that killing the heroes will put the bikers on the winning side. Donbay attacks Death Star but is defeated. Death Star stands on his head, and in a broken voice, he pleads with Honey to transform. She says she can't transform, she's just a secretary. But he insists that she can. She's the legendary Cutey Honey, and he pleads with her to remember who she really is. Elsewhere, there's a strange statue. It depicts Cutey Honey in her many forms. The statue is actually a gadget, and it senses that the time has once again come, and the world needs Cutey Honey once more. So the highest part of the statue, which depicts Honey as an angel, has eyes that begin to glow blue, firing what looks like a laser beam straight up into the sky. Death Star grabs Honey, ripping her collar, and we see that laser-like beam of energy strike Honey's neck. It appears to be a transporter beam, and a golden choker-like band appears around Honey's neck. Honey glows brightly and begins her famous transformation sequence as a blinded Death Star unleashes her full arsenal on Honey. There's smoke everywhere, and for a second, nobody can see anything. Then, as the smoke clears, we see Cutey Honey, dressed like a sexy medieval knight. She says, I remember. I remember who I am. I remember what I am. I remember what my purpose is now. Death Star yells at the bikers to get her, so Cutey Honey yells, "Honey, flash!" and she leaps up into the air. The knight's armor is actually comprised of millions of nanoscopic robots which disengage from Honey's body and reconfigure themselves in the air. Honey flips around, and her hair is currently short and purple colored. It too changes into black hair. Her armor transforms into something more akin to what Speed Racer wears, and her companion item transforms from what it was into a futuristic motorcycle. Then Honey holds an impromptu demolition derby, slamming into the other bikes with her own, doing donuts on the rooftop and knocking the bikers off like it's child's play. As the bikers and their bikes are knocked off the roof to their death, the supervillain known as Death Star asks what kind of monster Honey is. Cutey Honey laughs and says, "I'll give you this memento on your journey back to hell. Sometimes I'm a beautiful secretary. Sometimes I'm a warrior in gleaming white armor. And sometimes I'm the hottest thing on wheels. But the truth is," and with that, she once more yells, "Honey, flash!" and transforms into her final form. She is now a superhero, wearing red and blue spandex with golden boots, and her companion item becomes a sword, which she holds up and strikes a pose with. She says she is lovely warrior Cutey Honey. Death Star says what you are is dead, and with that, Death Star injects herself with a mysterious chemical. She then transforms into a creature that is extremely similar to Man-Bat. Honey says the villain's outward appearance finally matches her inner self, and a furious Death Star lunges at her with her claws. She attacks Honey, knocking Honey off the roof of the building. As Honey is falling, she sticks her sword into the side of the building. The large female bat mutant flies down and tries to kick Honey, but even in her current predicament, Honey manages to dodge. The bat punches a couple of times and misses those shots too. Honey whistles, and her own small aircraft appears on the scene, and Honey drops into its cockpit. As Honey flies the small craft, she does a barrel roll and makes a stealth check. As the plane comes out of its roll, the bat leaps onto the windshield, preparing to punch through the glass and kill Honey. But nobody's flying the plane. It's on autopilot. Death Star wonders where Honey went, and just then gets one of her bat wings cut off by Honey's sword. Death Star falls out of the sky, hitting the ground. Honey lands and walks over to see if she survived the fall, and Death Star grabs Honey by the throat, trying to kill her. So Cutey Honey kicks her eye out of her head, and the bat mutant screams and drops her. Death Star says she can't believe what's happening, and Cutey Honey is a hero and shouldn't be doing this. Honey says that Death Star killed too many people for her to grant her mercy. Then she says, "Clothes aren't the only thing that can change. Go tell that to the demons in hell." And with that, she does what is basically the blazing sword attack from Voltron. Cutey Honey not only cuts Death Star in half, the energy from her sword even cuts the car behind her in half too. After the fight, Honey floats and is in the air in her superhero form, and she has a glowing green aura. The other heroes see that green colored light, and when they get there, Honey now has long blonde hair and golden brownish eyes. She says, "Gentlemen, we have work to do." Mayor Light asks who she is, and Honey says the body they see now is her true form, and that she is a warrior for justice. Mayor Light shakes her hand, and they agree to clean up the city together. Which brings us to the epilogue. In Neo Tokyo, there's another supervillain named Jewel Princess, who biologically speaking looks somewhat like Black Cat from Marvel Comics, and that she is gorgeous, buxom, and has long white hair. But she wears far less than Black Cat does. Jewel Princess has something akin to telekinesis, but it only works on precious gems. Jewel Princess can't resist a sexy girl, and her front company is a jewelry store, which, aside from her having an irrational attraction to jewels, serves as bait to lure in pretty girls. Jewel Princess takes them in back and uses machinery to preserve each girl. The girls are placed in a glass tube, which then fills with gas, and the gas has a strange effect on them, similar to what Medusa did in Greek mythology, except rather than being made of stone, these girls take on a gemstone like appearance. One day, Honey is walking by the store and sees the beautiful jewelry in the front window, and Jewel Princess sees her and beckons her to come inside. So Honey enters the store, and Jewel Princess can't keep her hands off of her, walking behind Honey and putting her hands on her shoulder. Jewel Princess whispers in her ear that compared to Honey, these jewels are mere baubles. Honey realizes that she's being hit on, and in a none too subtle way. So Jewel Princess apologizes if she came on too strong, and she gives Honey a ring, which she insists is a gift and an apology if she made Honey feel uncomfortable. The reality, though, is that the ring is a tracking device, and that night, while Honey is sleeping, the jewel on the ring glows red. This allows a second glowing red gemstone to fly to Honey's bedroom window and open it with telekinesis. Jewel Princess then steps into Honey's bedroom and can't resist her beauty. Honey wakes up and says she doesn't recall anyone to visit at such a late hour. Jewel Princess reveals herself, and all she's wearing is less than a bikini made of gemstones that she holds in place using her telekinesis. Wanting to capture Honey, Jewel Princess then starts firing those gemstones at her with that same telekinesis power. Each gem is like a bullet, and using called shots, Jewel Princess shoots the thin straps, keeping Honey's outfit on. So Honey does her thing, jumping into the air, yelling Honey Flash, and transforming into a dominatrix with long black hair, brown eyes, and a dark pink latex outfit. Honey cracks her whip and says if her opponent is a princess, then she should call her a queen. Jewel Princess wants Honey more than ever now. So Jewel Princess fires more diamond projectiles at Honey, who uses her whip to knock each one out of the air. So Jewel Princess reveals some of her jewels are actually Omni gadgets. So she substitutes one for the flash power, blinding everyone in the room, and then she subs one for teleportation. So when everyone can see again, she's gone. And that's it for this one. The Jewel Princess and Cutey Honey went on to appear in many more adventures in our role playing game and were commonly used characters throughout the second half of the 1990s. Like I said at the beginning, I had just turned 18 when this hit, and this was sort of the beginning of the big hentai boom in the United States. Cutey Honey was, I think, the first anime series that I ever bought on VCR tape. And given the age and the newness of it all at the time, my friends and I went a bit hog wild. Several characters from Cutey Honey to La Blue Girl got added to the game. And almost all of those stories took place in Japan. I'm not going to go into it here because at the end of the day, those stories had little to no bearing on the modern day of our game world. But I always had a fondness for Honey, so I couldn't not do a video about her. In our game, like in the original anime, Cutey Honey ends up getting captured by Jewel Princess. In the show, Jewel Princess seems to succeed, and we see Honey seemingly turned to crystal. Honey, who is secretly an android, has some sort of internal mechanism that saves her, though, and she changes back and saves the day. But in our game, the point of divergence is when Honey is trapped and seems to be alarmed as the glass tube she's in begins to fill up with that petrification gas. John Redbridge shows up and breaks the glass, which we didn't play out so much as we just said that everything from the anime up until that point had happened. except for the setting, which I hated. It was an almost H.R. Giger sort of place that they called Cosplay City. Um, and nobody I knew liked the setting. So we all unanimously loved the idea of Neo Tokyo and we changed it to that. But other than that, we said that everything in the anime had also happened in our game world. So we saw quite a bit of Honey in 1996, actually, on a ship called the Nematon, where all of the world's heroes were assembling to deal with the coming crisis of 1997. But I don't want to talk too much about that right now. We will talk more about that in a future video, and I think this is probably a pretty good stopping point. I really liked Cutey Honey, and I hope you really liked hearing about her. If so, as always, smash like, hit subscribe, leave a comment. And from everybody here at the longest running superhero role playing game on earth, we hope you have a good one, and we'll see you in the next adventure. Bye.